One woman, 20 Marines. Zero chance, they thought. She walked in covered in ink from neck to wrist, and 30 seconds later the entire gym forgot how to breathe. This is the day the Corps learned why you never judge a book by its tattoos, and why this channel is about to become your daily addiction. If you've got red blood in your veins, if you love your mom, your dad, and this country with every beat of your heart, smash that subscribe button right now. Turn on the bell, and let's ride together, because stories like this don't come around twice in a lifetime. The fluorescent lights in the Marine Corps Martial Arts Center at Camp Lejeune buzzed the same tired hum they've been making every Friday night for 2 decades, throwing harsh white light across blue mats that still carried the faint ghosts of bleach, blood, and broken egos. Outside, the North Carolina humidity pressed against the cinder block walls like it wanted in on the action, but inside the air was thick with something far more dangerous. 20 fresh Marines who genuinely believed they were the baddest human beings on the East Coast. Word had spread through the bricks faster than a viral TikTok challenge. Some civilian female with full tattoo sleeves and a ponytail had just signed the open mat waiver for the full gauntlet. That was all it took. 20 devils in green silkies and black PT shorts formed the circle, bouncing on the balls of their feet, grinning like wolves who'd cornered a deer. They were trading 20s on how many seconds it would take before Tattoo Barbie either tapped out, started crying, or both. The gauntlet was sacred. Civilians almost never asked for the full rotation. The standing record was 7 fighters before someone limped out with their pride in a sling. Tonight they were dead, certain the record was safe. Then the door opened, and she walked in. Alone. No entourage. No phone held high for clout. No nervous boyfriend hovering by the exit. Just a black tank top stretched tight across a frame built from years of pull-ups, burpees, and pure hate for quitting, olive drab shorts, and bare feet that didn't make a single sound on the rubber floor. The ink started high on her collarbones and ran all the way to her wrists like a road map of hell. A faint trident peeking out when she turned. A frog skeleton clutching a diving helmet on her left forearm. Roman numerals down the center of her spine that nobody in that room could translate yet. Her dark hair was twisted into a messy bun held together by what looked suspiciously like a spent 5.56 casing. She dropped her mouthguard into her glove, rolled her neck once, and looked at the circle the way a lion looks at hyenas who haven't realized the food chain just flipped. Staff Sergeant Ramirez, senior MCMAP instructor and unofficial king of Friday Fight Night, cleared his throat. "Ma'am, last chance. You sure you want the full rotation? My boys don't really do gentle." She smiled. It wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile you see on a shark right before it decides your dinner. "Good. Because I drove 4 hours from Virginia Beach, and gentle would have been a waste of diesel." Ramirez shrugged. He'd done his due diligence. Whatever happened next was on her. The circle tightened like a noose. The first challenger stepped forward. Lance Corporal Hollywood Hayes, 6'3", 220 pounds of former Texas 5A state champion linebacker who still wore his ring like it was Excalibur. He tapped gloves with lazy arrogance and shot the double-leg takedown he'd used to flatten every single visitor for the last 6 months straight. 4 seconds later, he was face down eating Matt, her forearm already sunk deep under his chin, hips dropped, choke locked. Hayes slapped the mat 3 times so fast the sound cracked like gunshots. The gym went from roaring to dead silent in the length of 1 heartbeat. Ramirez blew his whistle. Next, Marine number 2 bounced out trying to box, throwing flashy combinations like he'd watched too much UFC on the barracks TVs. She closed the distance in 1 explosive stutter step, caught the lazy jab on the way in, yanked him into a tie clinch, and drove 3 knees into his ribs that sounded like baseball bats hitting raw steak. He dropped to 1 knee, gasping like a fish on dry land. Tap. Number 3 shot in low and desperate. She sprawled like she'd invented the move, cross-faced him so hard his cheek left a perfect sweat angel on the blue mat, transitioned to full mount, and reined short, vicious elbows until Ramirez physically hooked an arm around her waist and pulled her off. Tap. By the 10th Marine, the laughter had died, the bets were off, and the mood had shifted from cocky to concerned. They started sending in the actual killers now, the brown belts, the recon indoc washouts, the ones with 1,000-yard stares and real trigger time. None of them lasted longer than 20 seconds. The gym that had been a coliseum of trash talk 5 minutes earlier now felt like a funeral where nobody had told the corpse it was dead yet. Hollywood, ego bleeding worse than his split lip, shoved his way back in for round 2. Something ain't right, he muttered loud enough for the whole room to hear. Ain't no way a girl moves like that. She heard him. She looked straight at Ramirez. Staff Sergeant, permission to stop pulling my punches. Ramirez hesitated for half a second. Something in her eyes made the hair on his arms stand straight up. Granted, ma'am. Hollywood rushed again, this time swinging wild haymakers fueled by pure humiliation. She slipped inside the first punch like it was moving in slow motion, blocked the second with her forearm, and answered with a palm strike to the solar plexus that lifted him an inch off the ground and folded him like a lawn chair. While he wheezed trying to remember how lungs worked, she seized his wrist, spun, and executed a hip throw so violent the crash pad slammed against the cinderblock wall and rattled the entire building. Before he could even think about scrambling away, she dropped straight into an armbar, cranking it slow enough for him to feel every ligament scream, then looked up at the circle with eyes colder than a Norfolk winter. Anyone else want to use the word girl in my direction again? You could have heard a pin drop on those mats. 20 sets of jaws hung open. Phones that had been recording straight to TikTok slowly lowered. That was the exact moment the back door banged open like it had been kicked by God himself, and Master Gunnery Sergeant, Iron, Mike McAllister stepped through. 60 years old, face carved from granite and bad decisions, silver high and tight sharp enough to cut glass. The entire room snapped to parade rest so fast boots squeaked on rubber. McAllister had been coming to these Friday nights since most of these kids were still in middle school. He stared at the woman still locking Hollywood's elbow in a vice. Recognition hit him like an IED, and the biggest grin you've ever seen split his weathered face. Jesus H. Christ on a crutch. Jax freaking Moreno. She released the hold, stood up smooth as silk, wiped a smear of someone else's blood off her cheek with the back of her wrist. Hey, Master Guns. You're late to the party. McAllister turned to the 20 stunned Marines like a proud father who'd just watched his daughter bench press a truck. Listen up, you absolute clowns. You just tried to gangfight Senior Chief Special Warfare Operator Jax Reaper Moreno. 32 confirmed kills. 2 silver stars. One of only 8 women to ever earn the Trident, Class 247. The same woman who carried a 240-pound teammate 9 clicks through Ramadi under fire from 3 sides with a bullet in her own thigh. The woman half the team still swear is an urban legend because nobody wants to believe a 5'6" female can be that deadly. 20 sets of knees hit the deck in perfect unison. Push-ups commenced without a single word being spoken, like the floor itself had given an order. Jax rolled her eyes so hard it was audible. Get up. I didn't drive 4 hours to watch a push-up contest. Ramirez finally found his voice. Chief, why in the hell are you here? She looked around the silent gym, at the young faces staring at her like she'd just stepped out of a recruiting poster and started kicking ass in 4K. Because I heard Lejeune's boys forgot what humble tastes like. And because the teams are hurting bad for instructors who can still move like this. Thought I'd come see if any of you were worth stealing. Hollywood, still flat on his back trying to remember how oxygen worked, croaked, Ma'am. I mean Chief. I'm sorry I called you. She cut him off without even looking down. Don't apologize to me, Hayes. Apologize to every female Marine who's going to have to deal with that mouth for the next 4 years. Then earn the right to breathe the same air as me again. She walked to the absolute center of the mat, planted her feet shoulder-width apart, and opened her arms wide. Circle still open. Who's next? Not a single hand went up. Not one boot twitched. The gauntlet had been run in reverse, and the prey had eaten the hunters alive. That night, the secretly recorded video exploded across every group chat from Camp Pendleton to Fort Liberty. By 0600, it had 10 million views on TikTok with the caption, "When you try to jump the quiet girl with tattoos, and she turns out to be a Navy SEAL legend." By noon, Fox News was running it. By 1800, the commandant himself had watched it twice on his phone and sent it to every general officer with the subject line, "This is why we win." But the real story, the one nobody filmed, started 3 days later. Jack showed up at Ramirez's office at 0530 carrying a green sea bag and a set of orders stamped confidential in red ink. Permanent change of station. The Navy had finally admitted what everyone already knew. Too many concussions, too many joints held together with titanium plates, and sheer spite. Her body couldn't deploy anymore. So they did the only logical thing. They loaned her to the Marine Corps and made her the lead combatives instructor for the entire East Coast MCMAP program. The teams didn't want to lose her completely, so they cut a deal. She could break as many Marine egos as necessary, as long as she kept producing warriors. Her first official act on deck, she outlawed the civilian Gauntlet tradition forever. Her second act, she made every single one of those 20 Marines from that Friday night her permanent assistant instructor cadre. Hollywood became the base's most famous uke, demonstration partner, so often that the battalion started calling him Crash Test Hayes. He took every slam, every choke, every armbar with a grin, because for the first time in his life he understood what real respect felt like. 6 months flew by in a whirlwind of bloodied noses, transformed attitudes, and the hardest training any of them had ever seen. Jax ran the program like BUD/S on fast forward. 0430 PT in the surf, cold water immersion until lips turned blue, log PT that left shoulders bleeding, ruck runs with 80 pounds while reciting the Ranger Creed, and live fire combatives that left even the saltiest instructors limping to medical. She never yelled. She never needed to. She simply outworked every single person in the building, then turned around and taught them exactly how to do the same. Word spread across the base like wildfire. Female Marines started showing up just to watch. Male Marines started showing up just to survive. The gym that used to be a Friday night ego contest became a daily pilgrimage. Jax never turned anyone away. She just looked at them with those gunmetal eyes and said, "If you're here to work, lace up. If you're here to watch, there's the door." The fleet-wide MCMAP tournament finally rolled around like a storm front moving in from the Atlantic. Quantico, Virginia. 3,000 Marines in the stands. ESPN cameras. Every major command sent their absolute best. The openweight final came down to Jax, competing in a division no woman had ever been allowed to enter, and a recon Marine built like a silverback gorilla with a reputation for knocking people unconscious with body shots alone. The Vegas odds had him at 50-1. The crowd was 90% sure this was where the fairy tale ended. The bell rang. Recon charged like a freight train with legs. Jax smiled that same shark smile from Lejeune, slipped inside the first punch like it was in slow motion, caught the arm, dropped her hips, and sank a standing guillotine so tight the referee had to physically pry her forearm off after the tap. 11 seconds. The arena detonated like an ammo dump. Grown men were crying in the stands. The commandant himself stood and applauded. As he pinned the gold medal around her neck, the entire place rose in a standing ovation that shook the rafters. Cameras caught Hollywood, now a corporal with a fresh chest candy from a pump in Hellman, screaming louder than anyone, tears cutting clean tracks through the Copenhagen in his lower lip. Later, in the tunnel, a nervous female lance corporal worked up the courage to approach. "Chief, how do you deal with the guys who still think we don't belong?" Jax looked at her for a long moment, then rolled up her sleeve to reveal fresh ink still red and healing. A tiny crucifix wrapped in barbed wire with the exact date of that original Friday night underneath. "You don't deal with them," she said quietly. "You outwork them. You outfight them. And when they finally shut up and listen, you teach them. Because one day some terrorist with an AK is going to circle them in an alley in some shithole country, and the only thing that'll save their life is what a tattooed girl taught them when they were too stupid to know better." She tapped the new tattoo. "Ink doesn't make you tough. Ink just reminds you what you survived." The lance corporal squared her shoulders and smiled for the first time all week. "Yes, Chief." Jax walked out into the Virginia night, rolled her shoulders once, and disappeared into the shadows the way she always had. But the story didn't end there. 2 years later, a new video surfaced, grainy helmet cam footage from a joint raid somewhere in Syria. Same woman, now in desert camis, leading a mixed team of Marines and Kurdish Peshmerga into a compound crawling with ISIS fighters. 45 seconds of pure chaos, muzzle flashes, Arabic screaming, grenades cooking off, and one calm American voice giving commands like she was ordering coffee. When the dust settled, 12 enemy Kia, 0 friendly casualties, and one American chief with a fresh gunshot graze across her ribs who still took point on the exfil like it was just another Friday. The video leaked. The legend grew taller. Another year. Coronado. The BUD/S compound. A new monument had been quietly added to the grinder. A simple bronze plaque with 8 names. The 8 women who had earned the Trident. Jax's name was third on the list. No one knew she had paid for it herself, anonymously, because the teams take care of their own. 5 more years passed. She made senior chief. The teams begged to get her back full-time. The Marines flat out refused to release her. So the two services did the only logical thing. They created a joint billet never seen before. Senior Chief Moreno became the first woman to ever hold the title Master-at-Arms for both Naval Special Warfare and the Marine Corps MCMAP program simultaneously. She split time between Coronado and Lejeune, breaking bodies on the West Coast on Monday and rebuilding warriors on the East Coast by Friday. Hollywood, now a staff sergeant with a Bronze Star and a limp from Helmand, still sent her a text every single Friday night, without fail. "Gauntlet's still banned, Chief." She always replied the same 2 words, "Only for civilians." 10 years after that first night in Lejeune, a new generation of cocky boots stood in the same gym, whispering about the quiet instructor with too many tattoos who never raised her voice but could make a 250-pound man cry with a wrist lock in under 5 seconds. They had no idea she was the reason their training was so brutal. They had no idea she still drove down from Virginia Beach every single Friday, parked in the shadows, and walked in alone. The circle was long gone, but the legend never left. And every time a new boot even thought about talking trash, someone older leaned over and whispered, "You see those tattoos? That's what surviving looks like. Treat her with respect, or you'll learn the hard way, just like we all did." If that story just lit a fire in your soul, if it made your chest swell with pride for this country and the absolute warriors who bleed for it, do me one solid right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and join the fastest-growing military story channel on the platform. Every single week, I'm bringing you more stories of the baddest men and women America forgot to tell you about. Real heroes, real fights, real heart. No Hollywood script. Just truth that hits harder than a knee to the liver. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. California? Texas? Still got Carolina sand in your boots? Midwest strong? Overseas holding the line? I read every single one, and I shout out the real ones in the next video. Ora, huya, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay hard, stay proud, and never forget, tattoos don't make the warrior makes the tattoos.